My name is Richard Lyle. You are looking at the art of line perspective. This is part 2, 2-point perspective. Part 1 was about 1-point perspective. You may wish to watch part 1. This is a painting of a house I did. Every plein air artist, every artist, sooner or later wants to paint a building. To paint a building, you have to have one skill. You have to learn how to draw a building. You can't paint a building until you can draw a building. If you want to draw a building, you have to know line perspective. There's no way around it. So, if you want to learn line perspective, this video will teach you line perspective 2-point. The first thing you're going to want to do with any 2-point perspective drawing is put a horizontal line across your drawing surface. This is known as your horizon. The next thing you're going to want to do is put a vertical line in on your drawing. This vertical line is going to be the closest edge of the object you want to draw. So the next step is you have to come up with 2 vanishing points, one on the right, one on the left. The thing that makes 2-point perspective harder than 1-point perspective is that the one vanishing point almost always falls off the sheet of paper or whatever you're drawing on because the points are too far apart. So that's what makes 2-point perspective harder. You have an imaginary vanishing point. Here my imaginary vanishing point is on the left. That's VPI. And it's an imaginary. You have to guess where the point is. So that makes it harder to draw. After you draw that vertical line, and that vertical line should look the same size to you on the sheet of paper as what that close edge of the building looks to you. So you just have to this is something you have to eyeball. You have to say, okay, that building edge to me looks like it's going to be this big on the page, and you draw that line. Then you have to go from point A on the top of the line to the 2 vanishing points, and point B to the 2 vanishing points. The other thing I like to mention is the vanishing points always have to be on the horizon line. They're never off the horizon line. Now here's another place you have to use proportions. I do everything with proportions to figure out the size of things. So I look at the front edge of the building and say, well, that's about 1/3 of the whole overall length of the building that I see. So that's what I did. I put the front edge 1/3 from the back edge of the left side and 2/3 on the right side. So now we have the base or the foundation for our building. The stable, this is going to be a stable. My subject today is going to be one of the old inns that they have in like Vermont and Maine and stuff, where the stable and the inn was connected with a walkway, so people didn't have to go outside in the weather to get to the stable. So here I labeled the building block that we start with, so you know what I'm talking about in the future. So the front left side of the building I'm going to call the M view, and the front right view is going to be called the front view. So now we're going to put a barn door in the end of the building, and we're going to find the center of both the barn door and the end of the building. So I draw a vertical line for the front edge of the door in the end of the building. And to me it looked like it was 2/3 off the ground, so I drew the vertical line 2/3 off the ground, and that was the top of the door. Now to get the center of each, I draw a line from A to C, B to D, and that gives me the center of the end of the building. Now for the door, first we draw two lines from A prime, B prime, the top of the vertical line for the door, to the imaginary vanishing point. Then we draw lines from A prime to C prime and B prime to D prime, and that gives us the center of the door. Now we can draw in the back of the door. We go from D prime to C prime, and we got the area for the back door. It should be a box, and the two parallel points for the center points, one above the other for the door and the end of the building. All the lines should be vertical. All vertical lines are vertical. It's time to put the roof on, or find the peak. So to find the peak of the roof, you have to again look at the building, and I looked at the building and said, the height of the roof is about 1/3 of the overall height of the building. So I added it 1/3 of the height of the building to that center line and came up with the P point. Now to put the triangle in, we just go from point A to P and from P to D prime, and that gives us the triangle. But as this is a stable, I'm going to make it more challenging than that, and I'm going to put one of those barn roofs on that have the big overhang to keep people dry than when they got the door open, they're loading stuff in the barn and stuff like that. So this will be a little harder, but we're going to make this look like a stable. Before we can put a fancy roof on, we'll have to put the standard roof on. We do that by putting a vanishing point line from P to the vanishing point on the right. We need a back of the roof. This is a little harder than the 1 point. The 1 point, the front of the roof and the back of the roof are just in parallel. With 2 point, if you want to get real accurate, you have to draw the back wall in from the inside. So you have to draw a line from C prime to the vanishing point, and from B prime to the vanishing point is already in, so you don't have to do that. But you have to draw from D prime to the vanishing point, and from D to the vanishing point, and from C to the vanishing point. And then you connect those 4 points you created in there, and you have your box where D prime and D cross is 1 point, and where C and C prime cross is the other point. You draw that in, you draw your X just like the front wall, and then you draw a line from D to P prime, and you have the back of the roof. We're now going to put the fancy barn roof on. Wasn't that easy? No, it's not that easy. Now I'm going to tell you how to do it, step by step. Well, first you have to look at the hip or the roof, the bent of the part of the barn roof. You have to look at that barn roof and decide how far up the bend is in the roof, where the joint is in that roof. And I looked at it and said it's about half the distance. So halfway on the original triangle, I put a dot there, and then I drew a line from that dot, through that dot actually, to the vanishing point. So now you have to add that overhang to the front of the building. And in this drawing, I have that red line that shows the actual part of the roof that is the actual headspace you get in the barn roof. That's why they have those barn roofs. They give you all that extra space there to stack hay up and all. And it's a stronger roof. I went to this simpler drawing with less things on there so I could explain the front of this building better. So point 1 here is the extended vanishing point line of A and D, and it's a visual thing. You bring it out as far as you think it looks right. At that point, you have to draw in point 2, and you have to draw, you already have the line for that roof there, so you just draw at the angle that looks right to you. It's, it's almost vertical sometimes. So you just draw that line till it touches that line, and that becomes your 2 point. Now, from 2 point to 3 is just the extended peak vanishing point line. You bring it out the distance of this overhang, and that gives you point 3. So you draw a line from 2 to 3 and 1 to 2. Now to get point 4, we have to draw a vanishing point line from 2 to the imaginary vanishing point, and then we have to draw where that crosses the original triangle. We have to put a point there, and that point we have to draw a line to the vanishing point on the right, and then we add that distance for the overhang to that line, and that gives us point 4. So again, point 4 is on the vanishing point line from where the vanishing point line from 2 touched the original triangle, at that point down to vanishing point VP on the right, and then you just add the overhang to that line, and that gives you point 4. Then you connect the line from 3 to 4, and then from 4 to 5, and remember to put the overhang onto point 5. For the back roof, I kind of make it simple. Again, visually, I do the overhang for 1, and whatever distance that looks like to me, I add it to the P point, to the roof. I add it that same distance. I draw a line from the new 1 to the new 3, and then I add that little distance to 4 to find the 4 point, and then I connect the docks. And if you want to get real fancy with the extra long point that covers the pulleys, then to 5 you just extend that line, and then I would just visually do the line closest to you where it attaches to the original overhang roof. From that point you can draw a line to the imaginary vanishing point, and then the back side of that point connects to the original overhang roof at that point, and then you have the extra pointed part that covers the pulley. That's pretty much it for that. We're now going to put the upstairs barn door in. You do this pretty much the same as the bottom door. You draw the closest edge of the door, you draw that vertical line. You do it by proportion again. So you look where the bottom of the door is going to be, just a little bit above the garage door, and you see that half the distance to the top is where the top of the door is. So you draw your vertical line 2 to 3 by those proportions. Then you take 2 and draw to the vanishing point, the imaginary vanishing point. Then you take 3 and draw that to the imaginary vanishing point. And then you take 1 and draw that to the vanishing point. Where 1 crosses the center line is the center of that door. Then you draw line 2 from 2 to 5, the part of the X. Then you draw a line from 3 to 4, and that gives you the back points for the door, 4 and 5. That's how the door goes in. Then I also added these little, where you can see the beams because of the way you're looking. They always have the beams for the door. The doors are recessed in. Those beams I just draw in by eye. They're such a narrow width, like 12 inches, and you really can't measure it accurately. So I just draw the lines in how they look to me. I just place those 3 beams in. And I think all artists do it that way. We will now put in the front door and the windows in the front of the building. The first thing when putting the door and the windows in, I noticed is that the back of the front door was about 1/4 the distance of the whole overall front. So I put a vertical line in for that, a guideline, and then the height of the door was just under the height of the garage doors by some, and I put a mark on the AB line for the top of the door where I felt that was. I drew that to the vanishing point, and then I filled in the door. I noticed the door is about half the width of that distance from the back of the door to the front edge of the building. So I blocked that in. Then window 2, I did the same thing. Basically, I used the back edge of the door as the first the new measuring point, and 1/4 the distance to the back of the building was the back of the window of 2. And the windows are smaller than the door, so it was less than half. It's like 1/3 blocked in. I repeated it for 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way through by the same thing, just dividing by 1/4 and then filling it in. Now we're going to attach the inn to the stable. Now, the one thing we have to note is that the inn is not at the same level as the barn. The inn is going to have a foundation that lifts it up off the ground a little, because the stable is on the ground level, has a dirt floor, and the inn is up higher because it has a foundation to keep the floor dry. So therefore, it's a little bit higher than the stable. Before we can put the inn in, we have to have the walk across. I decided that the walk across was the same size as the garage door. So I used the lines from the garage door to draw the walk across. Now, B prime, I just drew a line to the vanishing point. And then I drew a line from TED, the top of the door, to the vanishing point. Now, the top of the front door gave me the height of the windows for the walk across, but I had to draw a line from TD to TD prime to find the top of the door recessed in. And then I did the same thing for the bottom of the windows, BW to the edge of the garage door, and that became BW prime. And from TD prime and BDW prime, I drew lines to the vanishing point, which gives me all the lines I need for the walk across. So here's the lines for the back walk across, with one exception. After I put the vertical line in for the walk across, I moved it up just a smidge, because remember, the inn is not on the same plane, it's a little higher for the foundation. So if you follow the bottom line now for that walkway, it does not go to TD exact, it's just slightly off. It's just slightly more pitch because it's going up. And once I have that line in, then I draw everything in. The slope line for the walk across is one of those things you have to eyeball. You can't see the back of it, so you don't know where the point is. Here you can see the walk across without all the markings and all, and get a good view of it. The important thing to remember is that back edge of that vertical line of the back of the walkway, the bottom point. Everything for the inn is based off that point. Before we go any further, we have to give some thought to the inn itself. Those inns in the old days, they basically had the ground floor where the the social room was, maybe a place for gambling too, and a eating area. All that was in the first floor, the ground level. Then the second floor was the private rooms for the people that had money. And then the third room was like in the attic. It was just one big room for the whole attic. It was just filled with bunk beds. And travelers that were going through would just pay to sleep for the night in that bunk bed. The first thing we need to do to put that in is that the base point of the walk across, that point there, we have to draw a line through that to the imaginary vanishing point, and from that point we have to go up and get your A and B line, but it's from the B point, from that vanishing point. That AB line, if you look at it, it's about 1/3 of the stable in thickness. So that's how I got the AB line. I gave 1/3 of the distance is now for the AB because it's half of the stable. So 2/3 for the stable, 1/3 for the in. The A point, I got the height of that by looking at it and said it's horizontal to A prime. It looks horizontal. That's how I got that point. And then from that point A, I drew a line to the imaginary vanishing point. It's not the same height as the barn, but it looked horizontal when you look at it. I used the baseline, the back baseline as a stable as the back of the inn. I decided that they were equal, and that's that B prime and A prime. Put my X in, drew a line up to get the peak of the roof. Everything else is the same as the other side. From A and B then I ran the lines to the vanishing point on the right, and it's just that what you learned for the stable applies to the inn. Now I'm going to put some figures in this drawing, and 2-point perspective helps you put those figures in the drawing so they look like they belong there. No matter where they are, they don't look like they're giants or little tiny small people. The first person I put in is A, right by the door, unlocking the door. People all have about the same distance above the head. I drew perspective lines to the vanishing point on the left to get B and C. After I got all 3 people in, then I started putting in the other people. I still used A to get F, D, and E. I drew vanishing points from lines from the vanishing point on the right to get D, and then I got vanishing points going to the imaginary point for E. And the person at the door, from E to the vanishing point on the right to get the person at the door. I drew vanishing lines from C to the vanishing point on the right to get figures G, H, and I. And then that completed my all my figures. I added some pictures of paintings that I did that used either 1 or 2-point perspective. I hope you enjoy them. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like it, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you.